I woke up to the sound of Jane crying, but somehow I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not even sadness. Just a quiet certainty that I didn't belong next to her anymore. The white hospital ceiling stretched endlessly above me, too bright, too clean, almost fake. My body was stiff from the IV drip, my head pounding from the collapse I'd suffered 2 nights ago. I shifted slightly, and from the corner of my eye I caught Jane standing awkwardly by the door. She looked so small, so unsure, like she didn't know if she had the right to be there. Maybe she didn't. While I was being wheeled into emergency, Dorothy had been the one clutching my hand, shouting at the doctors to hurry. Dorothy, who had skipped her sister's engagement party to stay by my side. Meanwhile, Jane had been laughing over bonfires and beer with Trevor and their friends. It wasn't until Trevor posted a picture online tagging everyone except me that Jane even realized something was wrong. Trevor called her in a drunken haze, half mocking, half concerned. And that's when she came running, when it was already too late. Now she hovered there, eyes red, mouth trembling, holding onto her purse like it was a lifeline. But I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. I couldn't pretend anymore. The weight of all her broken promises, all the cold shoulders and excuses, pinned me harder to the bed than the IV line ever could. Dorothy stepped back into the room with a nurse, her face pale but composed. Jane flinched, like she didn't know where she belonged. And the truth was, she didn't. Not here. Not anymore. When Jane whispered she would come back tomorrow, I said nothing. I just closed my eyes and let her disappear into the sterile hallway without a word. The thing about collapse is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, silent. You don't even realize you've reached the end until you open your eyes and see nothing left worth fighting for. And that's exactly where I was now, with Jane standing on the other side of a line she couldn't cross back over. My name is Barry, and I guess you could say I was the kind of guy who always believed that effort could fix anything. I wasn't the most charming or the smartest or the richest, but when it came to Jane, I thought I could make up for everything I lacked by simply loving her harder. We met in college during freshman orientation. Jane was the kind of girl you noticed even in a crowd, bright-eyed, confident, always laughing, at something. I was the guy holding a cup of cheap coffee, wondering how someone like her could exist in the same world as me. It didn't make sense then, and maybe it never did. But somehow, she noticed me too. Maybe it was the way I always carried extra pens and ended up saving half the class when theirs ran out during exams. Maybe it was the fact that I remembered her favorite flavor of ice cream after a casual conversation no one else seemed to care. About Jane had ambition. She wanted to climb mountains, travel the world, build a life that sparkled, and I wanted to be the man standing next to her when she reached the top. Maybe I should have known from the beginning that I wasn't part of that dream. I was just a pit stop, a comfortable place to rest while she figured out what she really wanted. Still, we had good days. Days when we would sit under the old maple tree on campus, her head resting on my shoulder, whispering dreams about the future. Days when I really thought I was enough, when I thought love was enough. But reality isn't built on lazy afternoons and whispered promises. It's built on what you choose when life pulls you in opposite directions. And when Jane's world started expanding, bigger jobs, bigger ambitions, bigger parties, I became a smaller and smaller part of it. Trevor entered the picture around then. He was one of her colleagues, but it didn't take long for the lines to blur. Jane insisted they were just friends, that I was overthinking things. And for a long time, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I bent over backward, convincing myself that trust meant ignoring the obvious signs. Late nights when she didn't answer her phone. Group outings I was never invited to. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. It all piled up slowly, brick by brick, until one day I realized I was on the outside of her life looking in. Dorothy was the only one who ever told me the truth. She wasn't even trying to hurt me when she did it. She just said it simply, like it was a fact everyone else already knew. "Barry," she said once after a work event where Jane was too busy laughing with Trevor to even notice me standing by the buffet table, You deserve to be with someone who's sure about you. I laughed it off at the time, but deep down, I knew she was right. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Jane could be sweet when she wanted to be. When things got rough, she would pull me back in with a smile, a soft kiss, a memory of how things used to be. And like a fool, I would follow. Every time. We moved in together after college, sharing a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a leaky sink. I didn't mind. It felt like building something from scratch. Every picture on the wall, every cracked coffee mug, every burnt dinner, we earned it all together. Or at least I thought we did. Looking back, I realize I was the one doing all the building. Jane was just passing through, staying long enough until something, or someone, better came along. The fight started small. Missed calls, forgotten, promises. Then they grew louder, sharper, until even the neighbors probably knew our schedule. Still, I stayed, because that's what love was supposed to be, right? Patient, enduring, forgiving. When my dad fell ill last year, Jane was supportive, in words but absent in actions. She sent flowers when he was first hospitalized, but after that it was always an excuse. Work, social obligations, too tired, too busy, and somehow always enough time for Trevor. It was Dorothy who helped me through those long nights in the hospital waiting rooms. Dorothy who brought me coffee when the vending machines were broken. Dorothy who listened when I needed to vent. Jane showed up once, half an hour late, still wearing heels from some party. She stayed for 10 minutes, checked her phone the entire time, and left with a quick kiss on my forehead like she was clocking out of a shift. And yet, even after all that, I was still planning to propose to her. I had the ring hidden in my nightstand for months. I thought if I could just find the right moment, the right words, she would remember the boy she fell in love with under the maple tree. She would choose me. But some truths are too big to ignore forever. Watching her today, crying at my bedside, as if she hadn't spent the last year tearing me apart piece by piece, I finally understood. Jane didn't miss me. She missed the version of me who would have still forgiven her. The version of me who would have held her hand and said it was okay, even when it wasn't. That Barry was gone now. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. It was almost funny how betrayal doesn't always come crashing down like a thunderstorm. Sometimes it drips, slow and steady, filling up the cracks until one day, the dam just gives way. A week after I left the hospital, Jane suggested, "We throw a small dinner party. Just the old gang," she said, "the people who had been around since college." Dorothy was skeptical when I told her about it. She didn't say much, just raised an eyebrow, but that look was enough to plant a seed of unease in my chest. Still, I wanted to believe Jane was trying. Maybe the hospital scare had shaken her too. Maybe she finally realized what we were losing. I spent the afternoon setting up the apartment, cleaning, organizing, even cooking some dishes Jane loved. She was supposed to pick up the drinks and a cake. She promised she'd be back by 6. By 8, the food was cold, and the doorbell hadn't rung once. When I finally called, she answered on the 3rd ring, her voice bright and carefree like she hadn't forgotten anything. "Oh, Barry, I'm so sorry. Trevor invited everyone over to his place last minute. I thought I told you. Didn't you see the group chat?" I stared at the empty apartment, the decorations still hanging sadly in place. I hadn't seen any message. I wasn't even in the group chat anymore. I swallowed hard. "You didn't tell me, Jane." There was a beat of silence on the line, and then she said, almost annoyed, "Well, you could just come over. We're already having fun. No need to be dramatic about it." I didn't even have the energy to argue. I hung up without saying another word. Later that night, lying alone on the couch with the decorations still drooping overhead, I scrolled through Trevor's posts. Sure enough, there they all were. Jane sitting right beside him, laughing at some joke he whispered in her ear, her head resting lightly against his shoulder in one picture. Dorothy sent me a screenshot before I even had to ask. No caption, no judgment, just the image. Maybe it was just an innocent moment, the kind you could explain away if you wanted to believe badly enough. but I had run out of belief a long time ago. The next morning, Jane came home humming under her breath like nothing had happened. I was at the kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She spotted the leftover decorations, the food still in their trays, and had the audacity to look surprised. "You actually set everything up?" she said, half laughing, like it was a joke. "Barry, you're way too sensitive. It wasn't a big deal." I didn't respond. I just picked up my coffee and walked past her toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, the first note of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Out," I said. That was all. I spent the day with Dorothy, sitting at a quiet cafe by the river. She didn't press for details. She just listened, like she always did. When I finally showed her the pictures, she sighed and rested her chin on her hand. "You know," Dorothy said quietly, "loyalty isn't something you should have to teach someone." I knew that. I had always known that. But hearing someone else say it, someone who didn't owe me anything, made it real. That night, when I returned home, Jane was waiting, arms crossed, frown on her face, like she was the one who had been wronged. "Are you seriously mad because—" "I hung out with Trevor," she demanded, following me into the kitchen. "It was a group event, Barry. Stop acting like a jealous teenager." I set down my keys calmly. "It's not about Trevor," I said. "It's about the fact you didn't even think to include me. It's about how easy it is for you to forget I'm supposed to be a part of your life, too." She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting." Maybe I was. But maybe this was exactly the kind of overreaction that saved a man from wasting more of his life. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Jane eventually retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stayed in the living room staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles overhead. The emotional dilemma was simple now. Stay, and keep carving myself into smaller and smaller pieces just to fit into Jane's ever-changing world. Or leave, and risk walking into the unknown alone, without the person I had once believed would be my forever. Neither option felt like winning, but one at least felt like surviving, and I was tired of bleeding out quietly, pretending it didn't hurt. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't kill you all at once. It's slow, cruel, dragging itself out over mornings you wake up still hoping for a text, evenings you spend wondering if you were wrong, nights where you lie there replaying, every argument in your head like a movie you never wanted to see again. After that night, Jane and I fell into a cold war. No yelling, no plates thrown across the room, just silence. Thick, heavy, unbearable silence. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, her footsteps careful, her words clipped short if she spoke at all. I kept my distance, busying myself with work, errands, anything that meant not being in the same room with her longer than necessary. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, my heart hadn't caught up with my head yet. I still caught myself glancing at the door when it opened, wondering if she'd say something, anything, that could fix it. I still paused when my phone buzzed, hoping it was her sending some clumsy apology, a joke, a memory we shared. Something real. It never was. The tension grew unbearable, suffocating every part of the home we had built together. Meals became 2-minute affairs, eaten in silence. Evenings were spent in separate rooms, pretending we had other things more important than each other. Nights were the worst. I could hear her muffled sobs through the wall sometimes, but I never went to her, and maybe that made me cruel. Maybe I was becoming the very thing I had promised myself I would never be, someone who hurt her back just because she had hurt me first. I didn't recognize myself anymore. The betrayal wasn't just about Trevor. It was about every small moment where I had made her a priority and she had made me an option. Every time I rearranged my life to fit hers while she barely spared mine a second thought. Every sacrifice I made without a second's hesitation. While she weighed whether I was worth the inconvenience, it was about loyalty, about being chosen. And I had finally realized I wasn't. Dorothy kept checking in, sometimes dragging me out for coffee or a late-night drive just to get me out of that suffocating apartment. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. It was her presence that reminded me there was a life outside of Jane's shadow, that the world hadn't ended just because my relationship had. One night, as we sat parked by the lake with the windows down, Dorothy asked quietly, "What are you really afraid of, Barry?" I stared out at the dark water, my mind racing through answers I didn't want to say out loud. Being alone, wasting 5 years, admitting I wasn't enough. I swallowed hard. I'm afraid that if I leave, none of it meant anything. Dorothy didn't respond right away. She just let the silence settle between us like a fragile thing. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft I barely heard it. "It meant something to you, and that's enough. You loved her the best you knew how. That matters, Barry, even if she didn't know how to love you back." I turned my face away, pretending to watch the ripples on the lake. My eyes burned, but I refused to blink. I wasn't going to cry. Not over this. Not anymore. When I got home that night, the apartment was dark. Jane's side of the closet had started emptying out little by little, subtle enough she probably thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. I noticed everything now. She was preparing her exit, piece by piece, while pretending nothing had changed, and I couldn't even blame her. I was doing the same thing in my own way. Pulling back piece by piece, packing up my heart so there'd be less to lose when she finally walked out the door. Suspense of waiting was the worst part, knowing it was coming. Knowing the end was right there, just hanging over us like a storm cloud ready to burst. Some nights I thought about beating her to it, packing my bags, disappearing before she could. Leaving behind the memories, the broken promises, the hollowed-out dreams, but a small, broken part of me still lingered, still hoped for a miracle, still wanted to believe the girl under the maple tree all those years ago was still somewhere inside her. Maybe she was. Maybe she wasn't. It didn't matter anymore. The next morning, Jane left for work without saying goodbye. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee I couldn't taste, staring at the sunlight filtering through the curtains. It should have hurt more, but all I felt was tired, bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. Tired of trying to fix what was already gone. Tired of giving chances to someone who had already left me long before she packed her things. Tired of being the only one still holding on to something neither of us believed in anymore. I looked around the apartment, at the life we had built together, and realized something simple, something devastating. It wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I made a decision without hesitation. It was time to let go. The day it all truly cracked open was the day Jane forgot to log out of her email. It wasn't even on purpose. I wasn't snooping. I just opened the laptop to check a work file I had sent myself. Her inbox popped up, still logged in from the night before. For a second, I froze. My fingers hovered over the mouse, my heart already warning me to close it. To walk away, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But then a subject line caught my eye. "You deserve better than him." It was a chain of emails between Jane and Trevor. Dozens of them. Late-night confessions, inside jokes I wasn't part of, complaints about how clingy I was, how I was holding her back, how Trevor couldn't wait for her to finally leave me so they could stop sneaking around. One thread, dated the night after my hospital stay, chilled me the most. Trevor asking if she had used the pity visit to soften the blow yet. Jane responding with a laughing emoji. I sat there staring at the screen, the words swimming before my eyes. For a long time I didn't move, didn't breathe. It wasn't just emotional neglect anymore. It wasn't just drifting apart. Jane hadn't been confused. She hadn't been overwhelmed. She had made a choice. 1,000 memories raced through my mind, all reshaping themselves into cruel jokes. The late nights she spent working overtime. The sudden coldness after friendly texts from Trevor. The way she used to pull away from my hugs just a second too soon. None of it was random. None of it was innocent. I closed the laptop quietly, sat back in my chair, and for the first time since this slow-motion disaster started, I didn't feel grief. I felt clarity. The betrayal didn't even hurt in the way I thought it would. It felt clean, almost relieving. Like finally ripping off a bandage to reveal the wound underneath and realizing you could survive it after all. I heard the door click open behind me. Jane breezed into the apartment, carrying a bag of groceries. Humming like nothing was wrong, she paused when she saw me sitting there, laptop closed, coffee untouched. "Hey," she said casually, "I got your favorite snacks." I studied her for a long moment, the familiar curve of her smile. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the 1,000 little details I used to memorize and treasure. None of it moved me anymore. "Jane," I said quietly, "we need to talk." She froze, just a flicker. But I caught it. The second twist wasn't just that Jane had betrayed me, it was realizing how easily she could pretend nothing had happened, how quickly she could step over the wreckage like it wasn't even there. And worse, how long I had let her. This wasn't a love story falling apart. It was a long, slow realization that I had been the only one writing it for years. Jane set down the groceries carefully, buying herself time. "Can it wait? I'm making dinner." "It can't wait," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Her shoulders stiffened. She turned to face me, arms crossed. Defensive already, always ready to argue, to deflect. I didn't give her the chance. I know about the emails. Silence. The color drained from her face faster than I thought possible. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No quick excuses this time. No fake confusion. There it was, the truth plain and ugly between us. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, beg, cry. Instead, she straightened her spine and said in a small, cold voice, "I didn't mean for you to find out this way. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what it looks like. Not, I made a mistake." Just a quiet acknowledgement that her secret had been exposed, and that was the real second twist. It wasn't just that she had betrayed me. It was that she wasn't even sorry. I always thought that if the end came, it would be explosive. Yelling. Crying. Some dramatic, unforgettable final fight. But real endings don't always come with noise. Sometimes they slip in like a cold wind under a door, silent and unstoppable. I stood there across from Jane, the truth hanging between us, and I realized we had already been over for a long time. "You didn't mean for me to find out this way," I repeated quietly, rolling the words over like stones in my mouth. "That's what you have to say?" Jane opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maybe she realized there was nothing she could say that would fix it. Maybe she had already given up long before I did. I waited for the excuses, the promises, the desperate explanations. But they didn't come. Instead, she moved toward the kitchen, busying herself with unpacking the groceries like we hadn't just crossed a point of no return. Like we could still come back from this if she just cooked dinner and smiled enough. That's when it hit me, the biggest realization of all. Jane wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing the convenience I represented. The boyfriend. Who forgave everything. The boyfriend who waited, the boyfriend who stayed. She wasn't crying because she loved me. She wasn't even apologizing because she missed me. She just didn't want to lose her backup plan. That hurt worse than anything else. I leaned against the counter, feeling suddenly exhausted. "How long?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Jane flinched slightly, but didn't look up. "It wasn't serious," she muttered. "It didn't mean anything." "How long?" I repeated. She sighed, setting down a carton of milk a little too hard. "Since the night of the company retreat. Almost a year ago, before my dad even got sick. Before I spent months thinking we were just going through a rough patch. Before I wasted countless nights waiting for her to come home, thinking if I loved harder, if I tried more, I could save us." "You could have just left," I said quietly. "You could have been honest." Jane finally met my eyes, and for once I didn't see the girl I fell in love with. I just saw someone tired of pretending. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. I almost laughed. A bitter, broken sound caught in my throat. You didn't want to hurt me, so you lied. You stayed and dragged it out until I hated the sight of you? She blinked, stunned. Maybe it was the first time I had ever spoken to her like that. Maybe it was the first time I had ever stopped protecting her feelings at the cost of my own. And worse, how long I had let her. This wasn't a love story falling apart. It was a long, slow realization that I had been the only one writing it for years. Jane set down the groceries carefully, buying herself time. Can it wait? I'm making dinner. It can't wait, I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Her shoulders stiffened. She turned to face me, arms crossed, defensive already, always ready to argue, to deflect. I didn't give her the chance. I know about the emails. Silence. The color drained from her face faster than I thought possible. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No quick excuses this time. No fake confusion. There it was, the truth, plain and ugly between us. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Beg. Cry. Instead, she straightened her spine and said in a small, cold voice, I didn't mean for you to find out this way. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what it looks like. Not, I made a mistake. Just a quiet acknowledgement that her secret had been exposed, and that was the real second twist. It wasn't just that she had betrayed me, it was that she wasn't even sorry. I always thought that if the end came, it would be explosive. Yelling. Crying. Some dramatic, unforgettable final fight. But real endings don't always come with noise. Sometimes they slip in like a cold wind under a door, silent and unstoppable. I stood there across from Jane, the truth hanging between us, and I realized we had already been over for a long time. You didn't mean for me to find out this way, I repeated quietly, rolling the words over like stones in my mouth. That's what you have to say? Jane opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maybe she realized there was nothing she could say that would fix it. Maybe she had already given up long before I did. I waited for the excuses, the promises, the desperate explanations, but they didn't come. Instead, she moved toward the kitchen, busying herself with unpacking the groceries like we hadn't just crossed a point of no return. Like we could still come back from this if she just cooked dinner and smiled enough. That's when it hit me, the biggest realization of all. Jane wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing the convenience I represented. The boyfriend who forgave everything. The boyfriend who waited, the boyfriend who stayed. She wasn't crying because she loved me. She wasn't even apologizing because she missed me. She just didn't want to lose her backup plan. That hurt worse than anything else. I leaned against the counter, feeling suddenly exhausted. How long? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Jane flinched slightly but didn't look up. It wasn't serious, she muttered. It didn't mean anything. How long? I repeated. She sighed, setting down a carton of milk a little too hard. Since the night of the company retreat, almost a year ago. Before my dad even got sick. Before I spent months thinking we were just going through a rough patch. Before I wasted countless nights waiting for her to come home, thinking if I loved harder, if I tried more, I could save us. You could have just left, I said quietly. You could have been honest. Jane finally met my eyes, and for once I didn't see the girl I fell in love with. I just saw someone tired of pretending. Didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. I almost laughed. A bitter, broken sound caught in my throat. You didn't want to hurt me, so you lied? You stayed and dragged it out until I hated the sight of you? She blinked, stunned. Maybe it was the first time I had ever spoken to her like that. Maybe it was the first time I had ever stopped protecting her feelings at the cost of my own. I pushed off the counter, grabbing my jacket. I'm done, Jane. Her face crumpled slightly. Barry, please, we can work through this. I'll block Trevor. I'll cut him off. I'll do whatever it takes. You should have thought about that a year ago, I said, slipping on my shoes. Not after getting caught. I paused at the door, looking back at the apartment we had shared, the life I had tried so hard to build around someone who never truly wanted to stay. "You don't love me," I said simply. "You love the idea of me. You love what I do for you. But you never loved me enough to choose me." Her tears spilled over then, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. Without another word, I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't even look back, because some goodbyes deserve to be quiet. Some endings deserve the dignity of silence. I crashed at Dorothy's for a few nights. She didn't ask questions. She just gave me a spare key and a pillow and let me be. One evening, we sat on her balcony, sharing a cheap bottle of wine between us, the city lights blinking lazily in the distance. "You're handling this better than I expected," Dorothy said. After a long silence, I shrugged. "I think I already mourned it a long time ago. I just didn't realize it." She nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes you lose someone long before they actually leave." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She understood. Over the next few weeks, I started picking up the pieces of my life. Slowly, carefully, like handling broken glass. I threw myself into work. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college. I met up with old friends I had drifted away from during my years of tunnel vision with Jane. And little by little, the world stopped revolving around what I had lost and started revolving around what I could still become. One day I ran into Trevor at a coffee shop. He spotted me first, freezing halfway through stirring his drink. For a second, I thought he might say something, some smug apology or fake politeness. But I didn't give him the chance. I just looked at him like he was nothing. Like a stranger in a crowd. And then I turned around and left without a word, because he was nothing. And Jane? She was a chapter, an important one, a painful one, but not the whole story. A few months later, I got a promotion at work. I moved into a new apartment, smaller, quieter, but mine, completely mine. Dorothy helped me paint the walls one weekend, laughing as we made a mess of ourselves. And maybe, for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't lonely. I was free. 1. Afternoon, as I sat on my new balcony watching the sunset, my phone buzzed, a message from Jane. "I miss you. I'm sorry. I made a mistake." I stared at it for a long moment, my heart completely still. And then, without hesitation, I deleted the message. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Because sometimes survival isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. And I had finally set myself free. 6 months passed faster than I thought they would. At first, the days crawled. I filled them with work, with books I hadn't had time to read, with long, aimless walks where I didn't think about Jane or Trevor or what I had lost. Slowly, without realizing it, my life began to heal. The wound that Jane left wasn't bleeding anymore. It had scabbed over, toughened, become something I could look at without flinching. I wasn't the same man I had been when I opened my eyes in that hospital bed and saw her crying. No, I was someone better, someone who didn't beg to be chosen, someone who chose himself. Opportunities came like dominoes falling in place. A new promotion at work, a leadership project abroad, a professional certification that I'd always put off when I was too busy planning around Jane's schedule. People started noticing, Dorothy especially. She remained the quiet, steady friend at my side, always knowing when to push and when to just be there. And then came the gala, a massive corporate event celebrating local business achievements, broadcast live across half the city. To my shock, my project team had been nominated for a major award. I almost declined to attend. Too many memories of fancy banquets and broken promises. But Dorothy insisted. "You have to show up for yourself, Barry," she said simply. "This is your life. Now, your moment." So I went. I rented a tailored navy suit, slicked my hair back, stood a little taller. I didn't feel like the guy who used to shrink into the background anymore. As fate would have it, Jane and Trevor were there too. I spotted them across the ballroom the second I walked in. Trevor, still cocky, his hand possessively on Jane's, Waste. Jane, stiff and overly made up, scanning the room like she was hunting for something, or someone. Maybe they thought I wouldn't show. Maybe they thought I would hide, small and humiliated. They didn't expect what they saw. Dorothy walked in beside me, her silver dress catching every light in the room. She laughed at something I said, her hand brushing my arm naturally, and I realized for the first time that maybe, just maybe, not every love story had to end in heartbreak. Trevor noticed me first. His smirk faltered, replaced by something colder. A calculation. A realization that the man standing across the room from him wasn't the same man he had tried to humiliate months ago. Jane turned next, and when her eyes met mine, for a fleeting second, I saw it. The regret. The sharp, bitter knowledge that she had lost. Not just me, not just what we had, but the version of me she would never get back. The MC called the stage winners for the evening. To my amazement, my name rang out, loud and clear. The crowd erupted into applause. I walked up the stairs without hesitation, took the award, shook hands, smiled for the flashing cameras. I wasn't thinking about Jane anymore. I was thinking about my dad, who was now healthy and proud. I was thinking about Dorothy cheering loudest in the crowd. I was thinking about the man I had become. After the ceremony, as people milled around for drinks and photos, Jane approached me, alone. Trevor hung back, busy pretending to be absorbed, in conversation with some executives. She hesitated, smoothing down the fabric of her dress, nerves clear in the stiff line of her mouth. "Barry," she said softly, almost breathless. "Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied simply, polite but detached. She bit her lip. You look really good. Better than I've ever seen you." I smiled, a small one, the kind you give to strangers you'll never meet again. "Funny what happens when you stop carrying people who are holding you back." Her face flushed. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I made mistakes. I was confused. But I never stopped caring about you. Not really." I tilted my head, studying her the way you study a painting you used to love but now recognize as a cheap imitation. "You cared about yourself," I said calmly. "And you cared about having someone around to catch you when you fell. That's not the same as love, Jane." She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. "Maybe we could start over?" For a moment, just a moment, I thought about all the years I had spent waiting for her to say those words. All the nights I had stayed up wishing she would fight for us. And I realized something powerful. I didn't want her anymore. I didn't need her anymore. Had fought my way out of the cage she built with pretty smiles and broken promises, and I wasn't stepping back inside. I glanced toward Dorothy, who was laughing by the bar, radiant and real in a way Jane had never been. Then I turned back to Jane and gave her the closure she didn't deserve, but I needed. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, "but it's not me." And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back when she called my name softly. I didn't turn when she broke into tears behind me. I didn't stop when Trevor glanced over, confused and annoyed. I just kept walking. Because the real revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. The real revenge is living a life so full, so rich, so unapologetically yours, that they become nothing more than a shadow in your rearview mirror. Months later, as I boarded a plane to Europe for my next career project, Dorothy seated beside me, I caught my reflection in the tiny airplane window. I smiled. Not because I won some competition against Jane or Trevor, but because I had finally chosen myself, and that made all the difference.